Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Rooted Creative Podcast. I am here with Kaylee Meyer. She is a copywriter and a brand messaging specialist, and I'm just so stoked to have her on the show. So, Kaylee, hi, how you doing? How's it going?
Hi, it's good. It is so good. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm excited to see what conversations take place today.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know for one, copywriting is just a thing that we all know is really important to have in our business, but it's something that not all of us are really great at or know how to do properly. And so I'm super interested to just ask you all the things about that. And also like why it's important too. But before we kind of dive into that, why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners and our audience who you are, how you got started in this field, and all the good stuff.
Yes, yay, of course. So, like you said, my name is Kaylee Meyer. I run Reveal Studio Co. We are a copywriting agency that specializes in web copy, email marketing, sales pages, and then a couple other fun things we do: brand naming and strategy when people are rebranding or creating their brand for the first time, and product copy. So, like, what goes on this can and things like that. And those are some fun projects that we get to work on. I got my start in copywriting. We'll like rewind a little bit. I went to school for journalism, spent some time then in corporate marketing, and then kind of took those two things, combined them together to bring a little bit of a new approach to the copywriting world, because we've seen some shifts in consumerism and what people are looking for when they are searching for brands that they want to be loyal to, give their hard-earned money to, follow on social media, all that good stuff. So I started officially full-time copywriting back in 2018 is when I left my corporate job and did this full-time. And I kind of started in more content writing, like blogs, social media, all that stuff, before transferring kind of naturally into copywriting, because it was a little bit more aligned with what my experience and education was in. And since then, we have just grown and continued to help mostly female founded businesses in the online space. Nothing against men. We just love working with women and seeing women succeed and being part of that journey with them.
Yeah, that's incredible. Also, journalism. Man, that's awesome. Side note, I guess when I wanted to when I was in college, my first major was broadcast journalism. And then I quickly found out, oh, it's not just about being in front of the camera. You actually have to do journalism. And I was like,
Yes.
that's not for me.
Yes. No, it's also, broadcast is very different for women than for men. They've shown that like when women age and start showing aging, like God forbid, have wrinkles or silver hair, they actually get taken off of broadcast. And when men age, it's kind of like a silver fox thing. Like, we want to see men on. Yeah. So I considered broadcast for a hot second too, until I heard that. And I was like, I just don't think the job security feels secure.
Like, you're
I'm
gonna
definitely
get
going to get
old.
older. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm going to look older as I get older. And then
Oh,
what? Then I have to go into radio, or what happens? So,
radio where they can't see me.
right. And I don't have a radio voice. Yeah, I was just, yeah.
Oh, well, whatever. I mean, I guess it's good that we both didn't end up in that route,
Right.
because that would have not ended well, I think. But that's awesome that you just like left your corporate job and then you started doing your own thing. So how has it been? Like, how has working with, other small business owners been for you so far?
Amazing. I say all the time, I genuinely can't imagine doing anything else. Just the combo of like getting to do what I love, because before I did this full time, I was still writing all of the time. And then also getting to be part of people's success stories. Like, as a copywriter, you're really in charge of a brand's story and of what consumers are reading about a brand, and your words have the ability to like let's be honest, make people a lot of money. And when you're working with brands that you really believe in and that you want to see succeed, and these are people, like I follow them on Instagram and I see their kids and I see what this money and this impact is, allowing them to do with their lives. It's just like a really special feeling to know that you've been part of that. So that's my favorite part. And it's been so good.
That's so good. Okay, so I have to ask, why is having good copy important? And where do we put copy? Like, where does that apply?
Right. So the biggest confusion is like, what is copy and what is not copy, right? Because there's so many words. So copywriting is the messaging that's intended to convert or to get someone to take an action step, whether that's download your resource, sign up for your program, book you as a photographer. Content is like social media, blogs, things that are more to inform, to educate, to entertain. So copy goes on your website, it goes on your landing pages, it goes on your sales pages, in your emails, anywhere where you're like, I'm writing this because I want someone to do something. That's copy. And it's really important because it's like your ability to connect with somebody. It's your ability to be human and to explain to them why you are a good choice, what will happen for them when they choose you, what that experience will feel like. I'm a huge proponent of your copy and your design. Like they need to work together strategically. And the metaphor I give is like, let's pretend you're single, you walk into a bar, you spot the best looking man or woman you've ever seen, and you're like, wow, yep, that's him. I'm gonna go over and talk to him. And you're into his style, his smile, everything is just, it's tracking. And then he starts talking and you're like, oh my goodness, the things coming out of his mouth are just not, they are not, how did I get into this situation? We don't want people to feel that way when they land on your website or when they get your emails. Yes, we want them to be like, wow, aesthetically, I can get behind this brand, gorgeous. But if they go to read your messaging and they're like, there is a disconnect here. The look is so good. And then the words I'm reading, not so good. That is why messaging is so important, because at the end of the day, if somebody is just discovering you, they care about your story. Research has shown, especially today's consumers, they care about your story, they care about your values, they care about what you stand for, how you treat people, all of these things. And if we aren't putting that message out there in our copy, how are they gonna find out?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's so true. And I love that analogy because, what you say and what you put out into the world is really important, like wording wise. I mean, would you even go as far to say like an Instagram caption is also copy or like social media? Or what would you define that as?
That line gets a little blurred. I think it can go either way. I would say probably 80% of Instagram captions are not considered traditional copywriting because they're, an educational post or whatever. But by educating people, by showing up, we are building that brand loyalty, that storyline, that trust. And therefore, that's going to lead to more inquiries and bookings. So that's why I say that line's kind of blurred. But typically, if you're going to hire a copywriter, they most likely aren't offering social media services. Content writers are. They can work together. Like if you're going through a launch, if you're launching a new program or something, a copywriter might write those posts because they are intended, like I said before, to convert. We are trying to get somebody to read this caption, go to our bio, sign up for our
Mhm.
program.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I've always wondered. I'm like, does Instagram and social media, does that count? And that makes a lot of sense. So I guess like the copy on your website is almost used to like sell, right? And so you
Right.
want it to be like your voice and your brand. I guess how do we sell ourselves exactly like in the best way through good copy, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question. I mean, there's a lot to it. Before you even start typing, there's so much research that needs to go into it. We need to research competitors, we need to research the consumers that we're targeting. We need to research what's currently working and not working. And we need to get clear on like, what do your people want to hear? So there's obviously different buyer types. People are attracted to different types of messaging. What I tell everyone though is like, tell a story. It's really important to tell a story. People are not getting on your website to read a resume, right?
Mm.
Let's just talk about photographers for a second. We want people to be able to visualize and truly feel, if we're talking about wedding photographers, what it's going to feel like to have you there on one of the most important days of their lives, how you're going to support them beyond being the person holding the camera, right? Because there's so much more to your role as a wedding or an elopement photographer than just like, oh, I click a button and then here's your photos. So it's telling a story, it's making it feel real, it's giving them tangible benefits that are going to come from choosing you. And then it's being a human, right? So it's like sharing little bits of yourself, peeling back the layers, being a little bit of vulnerable. Because as a photographer, your role is so intimate that if you're asking them, hey, allow me to be here on a day that's so intimate to you, but I am not going to tell you anything about myself, like that, there's like a little bit of distrust there. It feels a little bit uneven in the relationship. So beyond talking about yourself as a photographer, it's talking about yourself as a human being and how it's going to feel to have you there.
Yeah. And I've seen a good amount of photographers go that route and it seems to work, but there are a lot of people in our community that are like, I don't even know what to put on my about page. Like I don't know how to like word it or spit it out essentially. And so that's when I always say, well, look into hiring a copywriter like Kaylee who can help you. But maybe for someone who doesn't quite have that budget yet, what's like some of the best tips that you can give for someone who is trying to write good copy and put their voice behind their messaging, but doesn't quite know how to do that?
Specifically for an about page?
I mean, we could go about page, we could go like experience page, like,
Yeah.
what it's like to work with me type deal.
So a few tips. I do know that there are copywriters who do have web copy templates or resources. Those things exist.
Mm.
There's one coming in the pipeline for me because the number one request from people is how do I write my about page? I need help. So that's a resource I've been working on. I know that that need exists. But it's really like, number one, don't be afraid to let your personality shine through. When I read your about page, I should feel like I'm sitting at a coffee shop or at a brewery, somewhere with you, getting to know you. Think about what story you can tell that allows somebody to kind of see into your world, but also paints you as the expert, right? So you don't need to tell me about the best vacation you took when you were 10 if it's not relevant. If that's when you discovered you loved photography and that was, not to get sad here, but the last trip you took with your grandma and you're so glad that you have that photo of her, at the beach, and that's when you learned that photography is so much more than something you can put on your wall. It's something you can pass down and hold with you, right? Like figure out how to tell your story in a way that allows me to see into your life as a human being, like we were talking about, but also paints you as an expert and shines you in like the right light.
Mhm.
So I think everybody has that a moment or an experience where they're like, that's when things really clicked for me. That is really what belongs on your about page. I also am a huge proponent of there should be a section on your about page where you are sharing fun facts that maybe don't have anything to do with photography itself, because when you're there with them in person or having a call, they're like icebreakers. I want to be able to attach like you're drinking a chai latte right now. That's my favorite non-coffee drink of choice. It's actually how I got into the coffee world.
Mhm.
So as silly as that sounds, like knowing you drink that, it's going to be like, wow, maybe I'll show up to our first call with a chai latte and we can argue over which brand is the best. And like you drink Oregon chai, but I make my own chai mix, right? It gives people an initial conversation starter with you. So those things are important. I see a lot of people saying like, nobody cares what you drink for coffee. And I'm like, no, they don't care in relation to what you're going to provide them, but they care in relation to how they can like initially build a relationship with you.
Right.
We all need an icebreaker. And if I read your about page and know nothing about you, what are we going to talk about in that first 2 minutes?
Yeah, it's so funny because when I first got started with photography, I always talked about how I love grilled cheese. I still love grilled cheese, don't get me wrong, but like it was totally a part of my branding. Like I love grilled cheese, mac and cheese, like all the good stuff. And I would literally go to client meetings and they would hop on and be like, "Oh my gosh, Danny, I just have to relate to you with your grilled cheese thing." And like I had clients sending me grilled cheese makers, like
Oh,
it
amazing.
was the best, but it was a way like to relate to them. And so
Right.
100% I agree with you. I think that's like a great way to get someone in the door and relate with you. And then the other thing too is my husband and I are high school sweethearts. And so I get a lot of couples coming through that are like, we're also high school sweethearts and we're getting married. And so we have that relatability, and it's almost like they trust you more because
Yep.
like you're applying directly to something that's like their passion too, or that they're passionate about. So yeah, I think definitely having those things are important. So I guess like when you're building out, let's say like your homepage, right? And you want to
Mhm.
attract the right person to go to the right place, you're trying to speak directly to that target that marketing avatar that you've created, that person that you really want to relate to. Um, I guess like do you have to think in regards to like that person as you're writing out each paragraph as well, while also keeping your voice? I guess how do you my question is how do you relate exactly to that marketing avatar best as a copywriter?
I think more important than that is figuring out like what the purpose of your homepage is. In my opinion, the purpose of a homepage acts almost as a landing page to direct to all the other parts of your site.
Right.
So you really want to think through like if I was my consumer, what am I what do I initially need to see when I land here? Okay, we need to know we're in the right place. So there needs to be something indicating that you, like I clicked the right link, right? I see a lot of, for whatever reasons, photographers literally leaving out the word wedding photographer or elopement photographer from their first fold,
Mm,
um, because they just assume people know. And I'm like, we need to be able to see like, okay, I'm in the right place. Correct. Location, if you're location dependent or if you travel worldwide, like those are important things. And then just thinking through what is the next thing my consumer would need to see and know to want to continue reading. So more than like, how do I speak directly to this person? It's thinking through like, what is this person needing and what do they need to see? And then everyone before writing, if they're going to write their own copy, should be clear on their voice and their tone, how they speak. And then that's really going to like lead what your homepage sounds like. Some like logistical tips would be make sure your headers and your subheads are don't get too creative with them. So when I
yeah.
say make sure they're literal, I mean, make sure that if all somebody saw was the header or subhead, they would know what that section is going to be about. A
Right.
lot of people are on mobile. A lot of people are scanning. They don't want to have to sit and read paragraph after paragraph. A header is not a place to get super creative and fun. A header is a place to be like purposeful.
Mhm.
Um, be concise. If you read a sentence and you cannot show how that is directly getting somewhere closer to where you want to go, the sentence should be deleted. It doesn't belong there. This is not like a creative writing course. This is a business. And so we need to make sure that every word is serving a direct purpose and getting closer to like our mission, which is having someone book us. And then CTAs, making sure that your buttons actually have a border around them. I did some research last year on some of my own landing pages. If you underline a button, if you bold it, if you put an arrow next to it, people don't know to click
Yep.
it. They just don't.
100%. Yep. I
It needs a
completely agree.
box around it. It needs to say book me or book your consult call. Like it needs to be obvious. So
Mhm.
those are just some of the logistical things that are like really quick fixes that even if you're just making those changes, you'll probably see a lot more time spent on your site, a lot more clicks and a lot more inquiries.
Yeah. So when you're building out and, writing up a site for a client, are you also keeping in mind obviously like SEO, keywords and stuff to put in like the headings and also like paragraph? Can you explain like how exactly to use keywords, I guess, for our audience?
So I am not an SEO specialist. I get
Okay.
this question a lot. There are people who study SEO and their brain is typically a lot more analytical. It's a lot more like those are people who probably would have been really good at science, but chose to go into marketing. Um, which is great. I have personal beliefs about SEO, but I would never claim to be an SEO specialist. Obviously, there's an understanding of keywords in the sense of like, what is my person going to be Googling, right? Are they going to say wedding photographer in Austin, Texas? Probably. And so you can make sure that those words exist on your site. You make sure that somewhere on your site those words exist in a row.
Mhm.
Like I am a wedding photographer in Austin, Texas, right? So like
Right.
if somebody Googles that, they can find it. But I always tell people if SEO is something you're very concerned with and you have proof that it's going to help your business, you need to invest in an SEO specialist. I'm always very wary of copywriters who claim to be both.
Hmm.
I just don't know. I'm not saying everyone is incorrect in saying that, but I think a lot of people have just started saying, like, yeah, I take SEO into consideration because people are wanting that and they are wanting to position themselves as more of a one-stop shop. I just don't do that. So I keep in mind like what people would be Googling. I make sure that a lot of those words exist. And that's about as far as I go.
I think that's fair because I think like SEO is a completely different ball game than like
Yeah.
just writing copy for a website.
Right.
But I think in what you were saying, like you always keep that in mind as you're writing, which I think is good. Um, I guess like I always am under the impression of like, okay, every title has to have some type of keyword or, but I love what you were saying about having each section, like understanding that like that heading has to like tell you what that section is going to be about. It can't be like a creative aesthetic thing. And so I think a lot of photographers specifically fall under that, we're going to make this super aesthetic and artsy, but then the usability of that is completely off because the person who's on it is like, I don't know what this means,
Right.
and then
Like,
they
what do you want
leave.
me to do? I don't know where
Right.
I'm correct. Yeah. The other thing I will say is big SEO builders, especially in the photography world, are blogs. So I would just keep in mind that like all of this stuff is like a big spider web that all works together, and searching for like one person to cover it all is probably a mistake. I think what I have seen is I've had people say, hey, I did a VIP day with an SEO specialist. They made me this spreadsheet of keywords and phrases, and they'll give it to me and say like, when you're able, will you just like think about this and add and weave these in to my web copy?
Mhm.
That's totally cool. I'm like, sure, yeah. um, but I would just keep in mind that like it's not just your web copy that is building your SEO. I mean, like I said, I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure now anything connected to you, including social media, is being like woven into your SEO
Yeah.
rating or whatever. Um, yeah, so it's larger than just your copy.
Yeah, and I completely agree. So I want to shift over to more of the content creation, like you were just saying with blogs and educational stuff. To someone who's not doing that right now, can you explain like why that would be important and how they should go about starting that?
Yeah, so I mean, in simplest explanation is if somebody is on Pinterest or they're on Google and they are searching for like a very specific, let's pretend like somebody wants to go elope in Yosemite.
Mhm.
And so they type in elopements in Yosemite and you have a blog about how to elope in Yosemite. Well, when they click that blog, either on Pinterest or in Google, and they're on your site now, the odds are higher that they're going to click around. They're going to want to find out who you are. They might follow you on social media. In fact, they might just like say, oh, wait, Danny's the perfect person. Like when I'm in need, when I'm ready to book, she's who I'm going to go with.
Mm.
So it builds that. It also, like, anytime that we can help, we can add value to our consumers beyond the service that we do. So we can give them information, we can set them at ease. I know a lot of blogs are like checklists, like your packing list, or things you didn't think about when planning your ex wedding or whatever it may be. If we can make a consumer feel like, hey, I care about you beyond like the transaction, beyond you booking me, we're building that trust, we're building reciprocity, which is just the idea that, like, if I scratch your back, you scratch mine, I'm giving you this info, you're more likely to want to at least give me an inquiry call or a discovery call.
Mm.
That's why those things are really important. And like I said, they all work together as like a spider web. I'm also not a content specialist. I don't do that anymore, but if you're writing a blog, a lot of times you can pull like 3 captions out of that one blog, and then you can use that to write 3 nurture emails, and like you can repurpose your content and like really spread it out. I think where a lot of people freeze is they're like, I'm already writing 5 captions a week, and now you want me to write 3 blogs a month and email my list. Like, who do you think I am?
Yeah.
Yes, it's still, I'm not saying it's not a lot, but you can kind of like come up with like, these are the topics I'm covering this month. Right. I would probably write the blog first, pull the
Mhm.
captions from it, and then flip it and turn them into emails.
Yeah, no, I think that's really smart. And, me as I create with Rooted, I'm always thinking like, oh gosh, we have to have emails, Instagram, and podcast, and blogs, and like all these things. And it's easiest if we can just make like kind of work smarter, not harder, like create
100%.
one thing that has everything and then build off of that. And I
Right.
think that's the wisest thing to do. Okay. And yeah, as everything that you were just saying about content creation, like making educational content or like a blog post, not just like a gallery post of like, oh, here's all of our wedding photos and here's like the story of the day. Instead, like a blog that's like, hey, here's how to elope in Yosemite. That's so valuable for your specific it should be valuable to your specific audience, but it will be valuable in that they find you and then will begin to trust you in that like no trust factor that's created. So yeah, everything you just said was completely true. And I guess like copy is one of the most important things that you can be doing. And I love how you label yourself as a brand messaging specialist. So I guess before we kind of wrap up here, is there anything that you want to say, I guess, to our community that you think is just super valuable or important? Kind of like the last word.
I think the biggest piece, and this isn't just because I'm a copywriter, this is just like my best piece of advice, is when you get to a point where you are able to invest in a really good copywriter, it will be one of the most important investments you ever make in your business.
Mhm.
If somebody absolutely crushes your web copy, the ROI on that is insane. I mean, think about every single person who goes to your website, reads your web copy, and is now compelled to inquire with you. Your emails, if you sell products or if you're an educator, like, I think people kind of gasp at how quote unquote expensive really good copy can be. But let's pretend you paid, $7,000 to have your web copy written, and you book 2 $5,500 weddings. I mean, you just paid that off. And now every single wedding that you book because of your copy on top of that is ROI. It's a return on your investment. And so my biggest piece is just like, before you invest in branding or design or anything like that, copy has to come first. Most experienced designers won't even design a website without copy,
Mhm.
because design literally became a thing to amplify a message. So this idea that, oh, I'm going to invest in a really good design so it looks great and I'll do copy later, or I'll DIY my copy, I think it started to become a thing when we started getting visual social medias, right? Like Instagram, and we wanted our brands to look nice.
Mhm.
it's backward. We need copy first and then design should come second. So if you're in a place where you're like, I have enough money to invest in one, I would 100% do copy. And then when you start booking people because you're copy, take that money and invest it in a really, really good designer.
Yeah. So I guess a quick follow up to that, because I completely agree and I think that's really valuable. Do you, as the copywriter, build out each section of what the page is going to look like, or like how, I guess, how do you do that real quick? Because I'm actually just curious.
Yeah, it really depends. So I have a designer who I work almost exclusively with. When somebody books her for a site, they almost always book me for copy because she won't touch it. I build out an outline. It's like a wireframe or a blueprint. I hand it to the designer. Her name is Kira. She's fantastic. Um, and then she has creative freedom to do with that what she pleases. So she uses it as like a foundation and then she builds it out creatively. So I'm not going in and saying like, this is where a fun design element will be. I might say like, I'm envisioning this as being interactive, or I'm envisioning this as a banner and then these are logos, things like that. I might say that's what I'm thinking, but the designer then has the full, their literal job is to read the copy and be like, how can I amplify this message? And
Mhm.
I don't want to micromanage that.
Mhm.
But I mean, I give like my ideas as I'm mapping it out, but she will know the flow of the page, what's coming in when, where CTA button is going, all of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's so much work for one person who's also running a business to do. And so, definitely, I think outsourcing is the way to go if you're listening to this and you're so overwhelmed with web design, copywriting. Outsourcing is one of the best things I think you can probably do for your business to grow quicker and to start getting also more of those ideal clients that you're looking for, which ultimately is what we all want. So,
Yeah.
well, Kaylee, this was fantastic. I learned so much from you also, and I'm going to follow up with you because I feel like I would love some good copy. So, where can people find you? Where can we get in touch? All the good stuff.
So on Instagram, I'm revealstudio.co. Funny story, I secured Reveal Studio Co. without the dot and then got locked out of that account. So it exists, just I can't get into it.
All
So
right.
yes, I know. I was like, oh great. And then revealstudioco.com. And also for anyone who's like, great, I now have to invest thousands of dollars. There are such things as really good templates. I have a lot of templates on my site that you can check out, especially for emails, sales pages, getting testimonials, getting reviews, things like that. But I'm not the only copywriter who has those. Um, a lot of people do. I would vet the copywriter first. I would make sure you like their writing style. But if you're at a place where you're like, I can't afford to invest fully in one-on-one copy, starting with a template created by a copywriter is a really
Mm.
nice place to start. So you're not totally DIYing. It's a way lower price point, but it's going to be a lot more effective than just being like, I'm going to figure it out myself.
Yeah. 100%. The templates are a great thing. And I think that's awesome that you provide that. All right, Keely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so valuable for everybody listening, I know, because copy is so good. And I'm so excited that you came on. Thanks again. And guys, if you're listening and you want to follow up with Kaylee, go reach out to her. Check out her templates if you need help with copy. And that's all I have for you guys today. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for having me.